Wall Street Unplugged looks beyond the regular headlines heard on mainstream financial media to bring you unscripted interviews and breaking commentary direct from Wall Street right to you on Main Street.
How's it going out there? It's October 3rd. I'm Frank Curzio, host of the Wall Street Unplugged podcast, where I break down the headlines and tell you what's really moving these markets. So my daughter's party was a huge success. My wife was happy. My daughter was happy, which means everyone in my house is happy. Usually the way it works. So for my daughter's 8-year-old birthday party, if you haven't listened to the last podcast, got a big pool party in my backyard. There was more than 40 people that showed up, including parents and kids. We had a slippery slide, pool, basketball court. I rented an 18-foot inflatable water slide. That's not just for kids. I mean, I think 18 feet is pretty high, but adults could go on as well. And we had the same slide last year, similar party, worked out great. And I wanted to slide like 100 times last year, but this year I went on maybe 10. I mean, 5 times during the party, which I think only 2 other parents went on. I was trying to get all the parents to go on. They're like, no, it's kind of like, at these kids' parties, it's like when you have beer out, like everyone's like, no, one person drinks a beer and everybody drinks beer. Or if you have like birthday cake and you're like, hey, you want a slice? No, one person eats and everybody eats it. I just figure like more people will get on it. But I guess it was me and just 2 other parents. But this year I went on it maybe 5 times during the party, maybe 5 times on Sunday because we were able to rent this thing and they gave it to you for 2 days at a great price. And I only went on a few times because I could barely get up the slide now. I'm serious. It has these steps on the left-hand side that you have to climb up to get to the top, and the slide is like, right next to you coming down. And the very last few steps, you have to bend down like in a tight space, almost crawl up there to get to the very top, and then you have to shimmy your way over a few feet before you can go down the slide. And then, once you go down, it's a little crazy because, like I said, it is pretty high. Like even the parents, everyone gets up there like, whoa, this is when you get up there, it's high. So when a guy like me goes down the slide who's, I'm sure most of you see my Facebook videos by now. A little bit on the chubby side there, or about 3 times the size of most of the kids going down this thing. You could really pick up some serious speed. And not only are you crashing into this small pool, but you smack into the inflatable part that's holding the water, which, by the way, the kids love because they stand just outside the small pool of water. And when a guy my size flying down this slide, crashing into the water, there's like thousands of gallons shooting right in their faces like a mini tsunami, and they all laugh and joke around. For me, on the other hand, I have trouble getting up and out of this pool, maybe take a minute and stuff because you're slamming into everything. And, I'm 46 years old now. Getting a little too old for stuff like this. Climb up the slide, like it's kind of like climbing up Mount Everest, right? I was going to have to call someone to give me oxygen or something. But it really starts hitting you. And not just hitting you there, but the very next day, so Monday, and even into Tuesday. I mean, I felt like someone just beat the crap out of me. My back, my hip, my shoulder, everything was hurting. For those of you that don't understand that, or maybe in your 30s, which is a lot of people email me, a lot of youngsters out there email me under 30 or in your 30s, listen to this podcast. The difference between 30 years old and 40 years old is huge. I mean, it's like your stock trading on the pink sheets of the New York Stock Exchange. It's major. And I know it's just a number, but when you hit 40, everything just starts hurting. Like you're always sore no matter what you do. And keep in mind, as most of you know, long-term listeners, I'm coming off 2 back surgeries, both on the same disc. The second surgery, they took bone marrow out of my side, thigh, whatever, to basically place it in there and grow a brand new disc. And it took, get a full disc, a real disc in my back, which is good and bad since the rest of my discs, just like most people my age, are degenerative. So the new disc is the size of like, a brand new disc, and it pulls a little bit on the weaker ones over time, which could mean another surgery sometime in the future for me. And I'm always full throttle. Like I like to live. I just think life is great. You only live once. It's so challenging. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm always optimistic. And even the doctors after these surgeries are like, you can't play basketball, man. You can't do certain things and take it easy. For me, I just can't do that. I mean, life's too short to not do the things you love to do. When I get older, at 60, 70, fine, I'll be sitting on a couch all day. But right now, no. It's just not going to happen. I started playing basketball again And I'm in some pain because when I play basketball, it's full throttle. Like I play all out like I always do, showing no pain. But after that game is over, once I get back into my car, I'm like, "Hey guys, all right, great job." I'm like, there's a lot of pain. I'm calling my wife, telling her, "Hey, honey, get the ice packs ready. I'm gonna be home in like 15 minutes," because it is, you just feel it, like that pain. But it was interesting because a few months ago, my knee started hurting. I was just swelling up a little bit after every game, so I decided to go to the doctor. And I told her, "Listen, my knee's in a little bit of pain, and it's weird because there's a nerve coming down." And think of your sciatica, but it's not in the back, it's in the front. So it's in the front of your leg and travels down through your groin to my knee, and it was killing me. So since the knee pain was there, I thought it was a torn meniscus, which I got surgery on before on my other knee, which I did about 25 years ago, and it's been perfectly fine and it's great. So it felt like the same thing, and I was right. It was a slight tear. But in the x-rays, the doctor came back to me and said, "Hey, listen, you have bone spurs, and it doesn't make much sense to do any orthopedic surgery." So I'm like, "All right, great." And then she said, "You know what, though? I want to take x-rays of your hip because that nerve that goes through your groin filters through your hip." So I'm like, "Okay, whatever, just say." Right. So they decide to take x-rays, and she comes back in the room 15 minutes later and says, "Hey, we got some bad news. Your right hip is bone on bone, and your left one's pretty much the same. So I'm going to need hip replacement surgery now." That she tells me. And I'm like, "All right, great. What does this mean?" It's new to me. I know a lot of people have gotten hip replacement and they've done well after that. But I'm like, how long do these artificial hips last? And she says something really interesting to me. She goes, "You know what? I really don't know, since the average person that gets these types of surgeries, replacement surgery, is around 60 years old. And you're only 46. So even if it lasts 25 years, you may have to come to get another one." And I'm like, "So you're telling me I may need another hip replacement if I decide to get this one when I'm over 70 years old?" And she was like laughing. She said, "Well, you know what? Let's get the first one done, and then we'll talk about that again, when you're over 60 years old." But she was saying, since I'm young, more active, we're not sure how long it's going to last. And once you get your right hip done, you're likely going to have to get the left hip done, which is almost bone on bone as well. And it makes sense, right? I mean, most people do get both hips replaced, not just one, since the wear and tear is pretty much the same on them. Anyway, I feel like, a walking science project, but I'm not getting a hip replacement just yet. Doctor told me, "Hey, listen, go crazy. You're not going to hurt it anymore. Just do whatever you want until you can't. And when you can't, then we'll do the surgery," which I hear is pretty simple procedure, right? A few months of rehabilitation. And most people I talk to say, it's kind of like the best thing they ever did. They have no pain. They don't limp anymore. Gone back to being active, doing about 90% of the things they're used to doing before having problems with their hips and stuff like that. But I may be getting a hip surgery over the next few months. We'll see. Just more and more surgeries, man. It's kind of crazy. I'm still here, though. For your lifetime members, I'm still here. I'm alive. Not 100%, but I'm alive. So don't worry about your subscriptions to lifetimes and all that stuff. You guys are going to be perfectly fine. Anyway, great party. Had lots of fun. Now back in the saddle, getting ready for earnings season, which is just 2 weeks away. In the meantime, I have a great interview set up. New guest. His name is Dennis Higgs. His name you're probably not familiar with, because Dennis doesn't do a ton of interviews. You're not going to see him on live TV programs and things like that. He's a low-key guy that likes to spend time with his family, flies airplane in his spare time. But make no mistake, Dennis is a big shot in the resource industry who's made a fortune over the past 30 years, creating financing. It's like several of his junior mining companies to larger competitors. Most recently, he was the founding director and executive chairman of Uranus Energy, which merged with Energy Fuels in a $320 million merger. Again, Dennis is very successful, someone that probably doesn't have to work another day in his life. And that's why it was interesting when Dennis explained his new project with me. It's called Nevada Exploration, where he's the president and CEO. The small junior gold company that's using new technology to find big gold deposits in one of the biggest gold producing regions in the world. That's in Nevada. So to say Dennis is excited about this company is an understatement, especially considering he, along with management and insiders, own 36% of the company. Guys, you're not familiar with that. That's a huge percentage. Okay. That means his interests are aligned with shareholders. He's putting his money where his mouth is. And he hired a team of geologists who helped discover over 37 million ounces of gold in Nevada, where the Cortez is located, to really work on this new technology. Dennis and I talked a lot about his company. It's really interesting. And so interesting that when he did his last private placement to raise money in August, I asked for a piece of it for my Curzio Venture subscribers, which accredit investors to that newsletter, Curzio Venture. And part of that membership includes getting the opportunity to invest in private placements from time to time. I personally took a small investment in private placement as well, which I plan on holding for a very, very long time. But then it's going to tell you all about Nevada exploration, really cool technology. It's using to find massive gold deposits. There's some of the elephant gold finds in the Cortez and throughout Nevada. The stock he believes has tremendous upside potential, which is not just a pitch, considering he owns a major piece of the company. Again, putting his money where his mouth is, which is really, really cool. So great interview coming up. Then in my educational sector, I'm going to break down the latest news on Tesla. And I won't talk about the company specifically, whether it's a strong buy or sell. You have hundreds of other analysts that you can follow on Twitter with very strong opinions on the company. Go have fun. It's actually very entertaining. Instead, I'm going to focus on this one very important point, more like an indicator, that if you time it right, could lead to massive short-term profits. This indicator happens often in the market. Not a ton, but it happens enough to talk about this as an educational segment. And timing it, believe it or not, is not always all that difficult. So I'm going to break down this indicator and show you how you can make a lot of money from it by finding other stocks in the same boat as Tesla and the announcement that they just made later on the show. Before I get to that segment, let's get to my interview with first-time guest, great guy, resource expert, Dennis Higgs. Dennis Higgs, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Frank, for inviting me.
Well, interesting because we really first met and we were sending emails back and forth and things like that. But I met you in Vancouver and you took me someplace that was very interesting. And you said, hey, we could discuss some of the things I'm doing. Do you want to go someplace with me? Can you explain what that place was and what do we do? Because it was pretty exciting, at least very exciting for me, but something you probably do almost, at least a few times a week.
Well, actually, it was a lot of fun for me, too. We went out to the airport and jumped into my airplane and flew up around Whistler Mountain, a ski area locally here in Vancouver, and went out over the islands and had a great time.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed you didn't let me land it, though. What about next time?
Yeah, no, I'll do the landings. You can do the rest of it. You can take off and land. I'll do the landing and takeoff. How about that?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. And listen, yeah, I had a really great time. More important, when we were in the plane, we were there for over an hour and a half, whatever it was, 2 hours. Actually, even longer than that, because we stopped someplace to get lunch. But we talked a lot about you, your company. I got to know you, and you're a first-time guest on my podcast. And what I realized about you, just meeting you, is you're a humble guy. I mean, but you have an incredible track record where you founded and invested finance resource companies for over 30 years. Can you talk a little bit more about your background, again, since you're a first-time guest and people are just listening to you for the first time?
Sure. Thank you for your kind words. Very briefly, I have been involved in building companies for over 30 years. I started in the early 1980s, and 3 of my companies have been the subject of takeover bids. Very briefly, an early example was Arizona Star, a company that took public at 50 cents in an initial public offering. And less than a year later, about 8 months later, we had two companies trying to take the company over. So I halted the stock at 90 cents. It opened back for trading at $1.60 after we figured out what terms we were going to accept. And which was an early, for early shareholders, that was a stand-up triple. But that company was built over the several years beyond that, and it ended up being taken over by Placer Dome at $18 a share. So if you had the ability to stay in for quite a while, that was a pretty good return. But more recently, I built a company called Uranus Energy, and I started that in 2005 with a uranium mining expert, a fellow who knew how to mine uranium by a technique called ISR. Anyway, his name is Glenn Catchpole, and together our goal was to build the largest uranium producer in the United States. And that sounds like, or may sound like, an aggressive goal, but at the time there were only a few uranium producers in the U.S. The result, 10 years later, we started the company in 2005 and sold it in 2015. Sold it or merged it with Energy Fuels, and now Energy Fuels is the largest uranium producer in the United States. So again, my Uranus shareholders did very well in that transaction, so it worked out well.
So, Dennis, I want to put this in perspective for everybody because you've had a lot of success in the resource industry. You have enormous contacts. I mean, you've been in this industry for 30 years, and again, you sold companies to bigger companies. If I had to guess, you probably don't have to work anymore and could retire if I had to guess. And again, you don't have to tell me yes or no on that, but I'm just guessing since I know the success that you had in the past. But you're coming out to really run another company called Nevada Exploration, and you started explaining this company to me, and right away it hooked me. Okay, so I want you to talk about a little bit what attracted you to this company for someone that again, you've had tremendous success, you've been doing this for such a long time, but yet you see this small company, and for me, whenever I see somebody leave a bigger company or come off the sidelines who's very successful at running companies, financing companies, and start working at a very small company, it's very attractive to me. It's something that I want to stand up and listen to, because why would you do this when you could probably do anything you want, get a job anyplace in the industry? Talk a little bit about Nevada Exploration and what drew you to this company, and why are you so involved in it, right? As CEO, chairman, everything, which is incredible.
Sure. Thank you for your comments. So Nevada Exploration is very interesting to me. It was introduced to me through a friend. The interesting thing about it is they had spent 10 years, Nevada Exploration had spent 10 years compiling a database on water geochemistry, groundwater geochemistry. And they did it in Nevada, which is the world leader in gold production. Nevada produces more gold per unit area than any other place on the planet. So this got my interest. And once I took a closer look, it became very interesting. Do you want me to give you background on Nevada Exploration? Is that?
Yeah, no, I want to get the background and get into the technology, which is very interesting, again, which led me to be incredibly interested in this company. So.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's one of the best gold exploration companies I've seen in my career. And the reason why is they built this incredible database. So very briefly, some background. Nevada, I just mentioned, is the largest gold producer per unit area, but more than half of Nevada is covered by sand and gravel in the valleys. Nevada's a series of basin and range, mountain ranges, and then valleys and mountains again. So most of the gold that's been discovered so far in Nevada is in the mountain ranges, where geologists can see and project the rocks and so on. And but if you look at the history going back 40 to 25 million years ago, Nevada was actually flat, and that's when the gold deposition occurred. All the gold came into Nevada at that time, and then through tectonic events, Nevada was pulled apart about 15 million years ago, which created the mountains and valleys that we have today. So if all the gold that's been discovered in Nevada so far, most of it is in the mountain ranges, what about the gold that should be still in the valleys? How do you search for this gold? And it's about 330 million ounces of gold have been discovered in Nevada through the last 100 years or more. But with over 50% of Nevada covered by sand and gravel, it's possibly there must be another 300 million ounces in these basins, in the valleys under the sand and gravel. And how do you find that? Well, Nevada Exploration pioneered this technique for gold by using the groundwater. Very briefly, water is a universal solvent. And as groundwater flows and interacts with the covered bedrock, it picks up the scent of whatever it comes into contact with, whether it's gold, arsenic, antimony, and so on. So Nevada Exploration put this very large database together to look for these enriched concentrations of gold and other elements underneath in the valleys. How much background do you want me to give you?
That's great background. Could you explain, for me, one of the questions I asked is, this seems like technology, hydrochemistry, I think you call it, where it seems like a lot of people could be doing this, because it makes sense, and how you explain it to me of how, following the water, and I think you said by using this technology, you would have been able to find like a certain percentage of the biggest finds in Nevada. I think it was more than 80% or whatever. I mean, you have that number, I forget. But why is it that Nevada Exploration could use this technology and not too many other people are using it?
Well, it all started when Wade Hodges, our CEO, was actually leading the exploration program on a discovery called Twin Creeks. And that turned out to be 17 million ounces. It was out, they used what they could see in the mountain ranges and project the faults and structures and so on under the surface into the valley. And they had this big discovery out there. And a U.S. Geological Survey geologist came out and said he had a theory about groundwater that it would tell them where these gold deposits are. So he asked if the USGS geologist asked if he could use this technique around the Twin Creeks discovery before there was much disturbance, just to see if it would have told them the deposit is there. And sure enough, as he got closer to that deposit, the gold and groundwater values rose dramatically, and so did all the pathfinder minerals, arsenic, antimony, mercury, and so on. So once that happened, Wade then went out and set up Nevada Exploration. The company took the data that the government had put together, because the government has over 50,000 samples at various levels of government over the years, and they took these samples for drinking water, typically, or ranching and so on. And of course, they didn't assay for gold, but they did assay for the toxic metals, the arsenics and antimonies and so on. And those are pathfinder minerals for gold. So they took all those samples, 50,000 of them, and put them into a database. And then Nevada Exploration went out and took 6,000 samples of their own. And as you mentioned, they've got this incredible database telling them what the background values are for gold, but also what values to expect if you're getting close to a gold deposit. And they tested this on 35 known gold mines in Nevada, and it would have told them where 33 out of 35 of these deposits were. So it's a 94% success rate. So that's how the company got started in the background. It's now being used by us in Nevada to target these projects.
Now, talk about the cost, because when people look, one of the things that I always look at, I tell people look at is, one, you want a good management team. You want someone who's experienced what they have with you and your team on there, which I think you said your geologist discovered or led to the discovery, helped discover 37 million ounces of gold in Nevada, I believe it was. You also want to make sure that a company's fully funded, which you just did a private placement recently, which we were able to participate in, which I thank you for Curzio Venture subscribers. And also, when I'm looking at geography and things like that. But I also look at cost, right? You want to make sure you have enough money to do all this. Could you talk about the cost structure? Because people may not be familiar with this, and they may say, well, how much money do you have where, it's not necessarily where you're drilling like a normal company, but your cost structure is much, much lower doing this and sampling this, right?
Yes. So what we do is we take a valley, a basin, and we can go in there, and it can be a large area, for example, and we'll go in there and do our groundwater sampling. And I'll give you an example of that. We can, it's unprecedented low cost of collecting samples. We can narrow that valley down to one or two areas, which we can then focus on for about $1,000 per square kilometer, which is unheard of actually in the industry. An example of this is the Grass Valley, and it's one of our good projects right now that we're focused on. Grass Valley is just south of the Cortez mine area. Cortez is the best mine that Barrick Gold, but the largest gold producer in the world, Barrick, it's the best mine in their global portfolio. So south of Cortez, we have Grass Valley. And we went in there, Nevada Exploration went in and did this detailed sampling grid up and down all across the valley. And you get a whole bunch of zeros. Most of the samples are zeros, but they got two areas where they got strong gold and groundwater anomalies. So, of course, they went and staked that ground. One project is called their Grass Valley project, and the other is called their South Grass Valley. And then we went in on detailed, for example, at South Grass Valley and did a very, very detailed groundwater sampling program. We've got very strong gold and groundwater, several samples all lined up in a row. For example, if we're getting greater than 10 parts per trillion gold in groundwater out anywhere in Nevada, you've got an anomaly. In this valley, we're getting values as high as 1,000 parts per trillion. So it's a screaming gold and groundwater anomaly. Then we go out and use gravity geophysics to give us an idea what the topography looks like underneath this sand and gravel. And we get a very strong topographic relief there, which indicates that we have a fault structure. And in any of these gold deposits, you need a plumbing system. And so that fault structure could be the plumbing system that would have brought up the fluids that bring the gold into this area. And then on top of all that, we did an aeromagnetic survey. And the reason why we do that is On the west side of the property, we have what's called lower plate carbonates sticking out of the ground, lower plate. The lower plate is the host rock for all those gold deposits at Cortez. Cortez, we can talk about in a minute. So it's over 50 million ounces at Cortez in 3 or 4 main deposits. So this lower plate is the host rock. Let's see if we can figure out a way to find more of that host rock, possibly under the surface. So we do the air magnetic survey, and the magnetic low coincides with the lower plate carbonates. And sure enough, we got a 15 square kilometer area of lower plate carbonates, looks like under the surface. And all of this, again, is coinciding with the fault structures, the golden groundwater, and so on. So we've got all the things on the surface telling us that you've got the potential for a very significant gold deposit here.
Now,
when I fully answered your question,
that's perfect. No, that's perfect. And thank you for the explanation too, because again, not all of us are, geologists, and even for me, I'm not a geologist, but having to talk to geologists sometimes, makes me want to fall asleep a little bit. But that's why I'm glad that you gave me, you're explaining this in detail, which is important. But another thing when it comes to junior miners for me, when I invested in them, I just told you some of the things that I look for, before ever investing in a junior miner. And another thing too is if you look at your industry, right, in junior miners, that those stocks are driven by positive news as well as industry trends. And we'll get to the industry, which has been horrible for a very long time in gold. But what is the catalyst of some of the things that you're doing that investors can look for over the next 6 to 12 months? Because when you invest in junior miners and you don't have news, and sometimes that happens over the winter, depending on where you're drilling. Obviously, you can't drill in some of these colder areas, but when you sit there in a market where gold is kind of like and no, everyone's kind of looking to get out of it still, and funds are liquidating. When a stock sits there and doesn't have any news, it's very, very easy for people to just get frustrated and impatient, especially in today's market. So, what are some of the catalysts that you have if people do choose to invest in Nevada exploration right now?
Sure. So, we are actually drilling the South Grass Valley project. And again, to put that in perspective, Cortez, you've got the Cortez Hills deposit is over 10 million ounces. Gold Rush is just to the north, same area, about 12 million ounces. Pipeline was 23 million ounces before they started mining it. So you got, again, 40 million ounces just to the north of us. We're in the valleys of the south, and now we're drilling. We just started drilling on the weekend. I haven't had a chance to tell you that yet. So initial plan is to drill 5 or 6 holes to about 2,000 feet deep. And this will give us a good indication of, firstly, are we getting a lower plate rock, as we suspect, which is the rock that hosts those big gold deposits just to the north of us. And then, of course, what kind of values, what kind of mineral suite are we seeing in there? And hopefully we'll have some gold in there. I mean, if you look at some of the drill holes at the Cortez Hills, a discovery hole returned 1.5 ounces of gold over more than 400 feet. Well, in a little company like ours, you can imagine what that would do to our share price. And just recently in July of this year, Barrick announced another new discovery in that same area called 4 Mile. And they're getting some very, very high grade in there as well, 50 feet of 2 ounces gold per ton, this kind of thing. So, we're pretty excited. And regarding news then, we've got a drilling program that started already just there on the weekend. And we're going to have drill results coming out over the next several months. Probably take about 6 weeks before the first results come out. And then after that, we expect to have results on an ongoing basis.
That's great stuff. So it seems like a lot of catalysts. Now, could you explain, you said Cortez Hills returned 1.5 ounces of gold per ton, more than 400 feet. To that's probably Chinese to a lot of people. Could you explain what that means and how significant that is?
Sure. So the typical deposit, well, I shouldn't say typical, but the average grade of the deposit being mined right now worldwide is very low. It might be a couple grams or maybe a gram and a half of gold per ton. And I know I'm going back and forth between metric and imperial measurements here, but 1.5 ounces, there's about 32 grams per ounce. So if you look at 1.5 ounces, that's going to be about 60 grams. Over 400 feet would be about 100 and some odd meters, 130 meters or something. So that's a spectacular grade. It's considered very, very high grade, and you don't need a lot of that rock, that kind of grade, to be economic. And like I say, in fact, the Cortez deposits, that suite of There's 4 deposits up there now, Cortez Hills and Pipeline and Gold Rush, and now the new discovery called 4 Mile. Those deposits, that mine is the best mine in Barrick's global portfolio of projects. So this is considered very, very rich. 1.5 ounces gold per ton is a spectacular grade, and over 400 feet is a huge thickness. So obviously we'd love to have a discovery like that. They're rare, but you never know. It'd be a spectacular discovery to have, and of course the prize for any of these things is multi-billion dollars. These deposits with 10 million ounces of, just figure 10 million ounces at $1,200 gold is $12 billion worth of gold sitting there. So very, very significant.
Now, what are the things that you could have, great discoveries, you could have everything looking perfect, you could have a great management team, which we see with a lot of companies right now in the gold industry. But right now it doesn't matter because we've seen companies, no matter what they do, what they discover, even if they have a good discovery, it's kind of like their stock goes up and it's used as a liquidity event for everyone else to get out of it. And that's what happens during bear markets. You've been involved in gold, uranium, all kinds for 30 years. And I know, how difficult, this market is. And you still deciding to really say, okay, Nevada exploration offers tremendous potential. Are you looking at it from a market point of view to where, of course it's company specific and you know what you can do with the company, but in the end, if gold prices fall to $700-800, just say, I don't believe they're going to fall there. I mean, it changes the whole landscape of what everyone's doing in this industry. So what's your outlook on gold, the industry? What are you hearing from your contacts? What are you seeing, which I know you're highly connected, even to some funds and things like that are probably investing in this industry. I was just curious to see what your thoughts are in a market where I think has fooled almost everyone since Trump got elected, where a lot of us thought gold will go higher. We have an environment out there, which which is, we've had low interest rates, we had high interest rates, we've had inflation. Now we're seeing inflation. We had zero inflation. Now we're seeing inflation rise a lot in the U.S. But it seems like all these conditions, even more spending by governments, is not pushing gold up. What are your thoughts on the gold market going forward, and what's going to push gold prices higher?
Sure. It's funny. Was it Bernanke that said gold is confusing to him as well? How do you phrase it?
Yeah.
Here, the former Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke famously told Congress that nobody really understands gold prices, and I don't pretend to really understand them either. but the reality is, I think the gold price is influenced by the value of the U.S. dollar, of course. It's influenced by central banks, inflation, supply and demand, economics of gold itself, industrial and commercial uses, and so on. So there's so many factors affecting the price of gold. I'm certainly not an expert on it, but I think looking for the future here, inflation is expected to kick in from the unprecedented quantitative easing, the Fed monetary policy where they're printing money like crazy. So that should be bullish for gold, and that's my best analysis.
No, and I appreciate that too, because I know it's something that we all have to look at these days, because even some great companies I invested in that have some great discoveries that are just, high grade, great management teams have seen their stock fall 60-70% in this market. So it's something that you want to really focus on your company. You can't control those outside forces, but it's just nice to get your opinion to see, this has been dragging on for such a long time. And when this trend turns, as you know, I mean, even the worst stocks would go up 10, 20 times, especially from these levels. So just interested in getting your opinion, which leads me to my last question here. So most important, because we have a product called Wall Street. It's basically the all-star portfolio from a Wall Street Unplugged from the people I interview. And usually we get stock picks and things like that. And sometimes we'll put them in this portfolio to track them, because we realize a lot of people weren't tracking some of the names that my guests give, and they could be making a lot of money off of it. So from someone who follows the industry, and you could have no companies, which is perfectly fine. I was just curious, is there anything that maybe you're investing in, or other companies outside Nevada exploration, which I know is taking probably 95% of your time, but you're in the industry, you have tons of friends in the industry. Is there any other names that you're investing in that you see, even maybe uranium, which you have an amazing background with, that you see has tremendous upside potential? And again, feel free, you don't have to name anything. I was just curious if there's any investments outside Nevada exploration you're looking at.
Well, sure. No, I appreciate the question. Just talking about Nevada exploration just for one more minute, the company is being run by two gentlemen, or the exploration is being led by two gentlemen who have discovered more than 37 million ounces of gold, most of that in Nevada. So I'm a very large shareholder in Nevada exploration management, and their families and insiders and so on. We own about 36% of that company. So obviously I'm excited and fully committed to that company, to Nevada exploration. But another one that I'm invested in and I like a lot is Azarga Uranium, which is a uranium play that has been spending the last 10 years building, or I should say permitting, their Dewey-Burdock project. The Dewey-Burdock uranium project is the best undeveloped ISR uranium project in the United States. And sooner or later, they're going to get their permits, hopefully sooner, which I expect sometime in the next 6 to 9 months. And then that company will be probably be subject to a takeover bid. So we'll see.
No, that's perfect, and that's great. And I appreciate you mentioning about the stake, right? Because you're really putting your money where your mouth is, and it's in the shareholders' best interest, and your interests are aligned with shareholders when management and insiders own not just more than 35% of the company, like you said, but the last private placement is something that I like to see is you also participate in that, right? And when you see insiders participating in that and not just raising money, but they're actually putting more money into the company, it kind of tells you that it could be the right time to buy. And again, those are things that I look at that are very positive for the stock. So.
Yes, in Nevada Exploration, a recent private placement in August and so on, insiders invested another $750,000. So we are definitely committed to this company. We believe in what we're doing.
Well, Dennis, thanks so much for introducing us to the company, for coming on. And I know I'm going to see you again. We've been talking a lot lately because I love picking your mind because, again, you're someone who's been in this industry for a very long time and is brilliant and someone that I turn to even when I find companies and look at different companies and just get your advice on it. So I really appreciate you coming on and doing this interview for my listeners. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Well, Frank, thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate the chance to talk. Thank you.
You guys, great stuff from Dennis. As you can see during that interview, and he was like, was that okay? Is that good enough? I mean, he just has his personality. And by the way, to me, he looks a lot like John Gruden, right? The coach of the Raiders right now, NFL, again, your football fan, you know what I'm talking about. But he makes the face, and he look like Chucky. And, he looks like an intense guy. And then when you hear him talk, you can't really put that to his face. But, just an amazing person, very brilliant. It's hard for me when I interview and when I talk to people like this, usually there's like an ego attached to it that's well deserving, right? I mean, you're really good at what you do. You've made money throughout your career and you're brilliant. And with him, it's kind of like he's just like a humble guy, So for him to come off the sidelines and get involved with Nevada Exploration is just interesting for me. Nevada Exploration, that symbol is NGE.V if you're looking for it. And again, full disclosure, Nevada Exploration just did a private placement in August. I offered it to my Curzio Ventures subscribers. Also took a small piece of it myself where we're locked up probably through December, and we were able to receive a half warrant on that investment as well. So if you're an accredited investor, which means you made more than $200,000 annually or $300,000 joint income with your spouse over the past 2 years, that qualifies you. Or if you have a net worth more than $1 million, that qualifies you as an accredited investor where you can get into these private placements. Then, as a Curzio Venture Opportunity subscriber, you can participate in a lot of these where you do get warrants, and that's really big, right? I mean, it lowers your risk, and when that stock does go higher, and it doesn't always go higher, and we've lost money in some private placements that offered warrants because it's a tough industry in mining. We've been in a couple of technology companies as well, but it's a really cool deal, and it's something that's not offered with a lot of other newsletters out there because you really need great contacts. And the reason why is I don't offer a lot of private placement deals to my subscribers. Since I started Curzio Venture Opportunities, probably around 2 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 total over the past 2 years. And it's because I do a ton of due diligence on these deals. And look, I could put 50 every year, maybe 100 in front of you, right? After all, every company's looking to raise money, everybody. But my job is to pick the best deals that I think you're going to make a lot of money on. So there's a lot of due diligence involved. There's people who come to me with these, and Frank, you want a piece of this deal? And there's a lot of times, more often than not, that I say no. But the deals I present to you are deals that I think are fantastic, and a lot of times that I'm investing in personally, and I want to see you guys get in those deals and get warrants if you're accredited investors. Getting back to Dennis, I'm a big believer in him. Again, I'm an owner of the stock. I'm not selling anytime soon. He's just, when I met him, he has the it factor. He's a guy that just will do anything not to fail. And anything legally, I mean, but he's just, you can see that drive, which is really cool. And you see it in a lot of guys, Keith Neumeyer, I think Amir Nani, guys who've been sitting in this industry, which has been horrible, yet they're out on the road constantly, talking to their investors, getting out there, understanding that this is, their stocks are getting crushed. It's a tough market. Nevada Exploration is not getting crushed. It's actually doing pretty well right now. And it's still a very small, very, very cheap company. But this is something that I like. And yes, you're going to need a gold sector to come out of its funk a little bit, right? It's been an incredible bear market. For me, I don't mind waiting. So if you decide to invest in this company, just know it's very small, has a ton of risk, and only invest money you can afford to lose. If you do that with a lot of these junior miners, if you hit the cycle right, we're not talking about 100, 200% gains. We've seen in the past, I've recommended guys in the past to you where we've seen their stocks go up 5 times, 7 times, over 10 times in this industry. Unfortunately, it's only happened in about a 7-month period, 2016, over the past 4 to 5 years. So it's been a little crazy in this industry. When everything else goes up, gold hasn't been going up. But anyway, I could put a lot of CEOs like Dennis in front of you. The small companies that I like, probably ones that you haven't really heard of, that I get introduced to a lot. So I can interview a lot of these people. Like I said, this podcast is about you, not about me. So many of you thought about Dennis. If you want me to interview more small cap CEOs going forward, let me know. And we've interviewed lots of people from Northern Dynasty to Garth Brooks, which, that stock didn't work out, right? So these are risky stocks, and a lot of times, but again, having access to this industry, having access to a lot of different industries, being in this industry for 20, 25 years, and researching all these industries, including technology, biotech, I'm able to put a lot of these people in front of you. And, a lot of these companies are small that you're not going to hear anyplace else. So if you like that interview, let me know. FrankCurzioResearch.com. It's FrankCurzioResearch.com. Always stick to the analyst. It's going to give you great stock ideas and things like that. But again, this podcast is about you, not about me. So let me know what you thought at Frank@CurzioResearch.com. Now, on to my educational segment. So I did a Facebook Live video on Tesla last week. Got the SEC charged Elon Musk, who's the CEO. And I said that you had to avoid Tesla for one simple fact, because I was very surprised Musk did not settle with the SEC. And I know he wanted to remain executive at the company. And at first, it seemed like, at least that's, I think, the Wall Street Journal reporter who leaked a lot of this information, said that they were going to take him out of the executive position, which is why he didn't accept it. I was very surprised how quick the turnaround came, like that weekend where they did settle. Because I said in that video, fighting the SEC is always 100% of the time, it's a losing case. Okay, you can't win. It creates long-term uncertainty. The SEC could drag the case out for many, many years and just sit on it, get back to you whenever you want. They could open an investigation into Tesla. Remember, only Musk was charged at the time, at first. Go over all your operations, everything, like turn over everything if they wanted to. They can halt production if they want to. Again, it's a government. They can do whatever they want. They can actually tell you, you know what, you can't advertise your company during the investigation. And you know what? Most of the time, you can't raise money either. And we know that Tesla's going to have to raise money sooner or later. They said it wasn't going to happen last year. They were right. But eventually, you're going to have to raise money. You're just not bringing in enough cash, and you're burning through money like crazy. So when the news broke this weekend where Musk settled with the SEC for $20 million, and by the way, Tesla, they said it's going to have to pay another $20 million. I mean, maybe for investors who don't follow stocks or individual investors who are just kind of new to the markets and stuff like that, you might think this is bad because a company's just paying $40 million because some idiot decided to tweet something that was not true, which is ridiculous. But when it comes to stocks, uncertainty trumps cash. In other words, when you settle with the SEC or any government authority that's looking into you, you remove a major risk from your company. That's why the stock soared 17% after they announced that settlement. I've never seen something go from, in a few days, I've never seen it happen in 25 years in my market where you're not settling, and then 2 days later you announce you are settling. And I know where that came from, because I bet you had Ron Barron on CNBC the next day, which is Tuesday, talking about Tesla, saying how we think this company is going to do $1 trillion in sales one day. And I think they're doing what? Like a few $1 billion, 10, 20, whatever they're doing in sales. But you can see how optimistic he is of this being a major car manufacturer and competing with the big boys, even though they have a bigger market cap than these guys already, than GM and Ford. But I bet you a lot of the biggest shareholders told him and said, listen, they're the smart guys. They understand the industry, and said, look, don't be an idiot and fight the SEC, because it's going to create a drag on your company, huge uncertainty, and it lasts for a very, very long time. And it's hard for fund managers to take long-term positions in stocks when you have that much uncertainty, where there's just going to be rumors flying. Anything else he does is going to be, just highly scrutinized every place, even if he takes a little hit of a joint on Rogan's podcast, which, just blew up. And this is the kind of CEO you're fighting when, God, I've met CEOs, believe me, they've done a lot of crazy drugs in that. But, everything gets amplified and it gets pretty crazy. So you're looking at Tesla. and you say, okay, this company just settled with the SEC, it's up 17%. If I was Tesla right now, if I was Elon Musk, I would raise $3 billion right now. I mean, do so with a huge secondary offering at a 15% discount. So maybe at $250 a share. I mean, you're easily going to raise that money right now. And again, it's a 50% discount from the current price. And if you're in it, you're like, wow, I'm going to take a hit. But you're going to take a hit just in a very short period of time. Because by doing this, by raising cash right now, right? Your stock was 250 last week, right? On all this news, pretty much 250, 260. Now you could raise all this money right now. And by doing that, you completely remove the bear case from the stock. Completely. Because now you have enough cash to increase production, build more cars, operate at least another 18 months. And the stock will climb right back over $300 a share. I wouldn't be surprised if it went right through $400 a share, a new high, over the next 6 months, if you did that. Since you're removing the two major risks from the company. And that's raising capital and the SEC investigation, right? So you don't have to worry about the SEC investigation anymore. I got punished for that. That's in the past. And now you're raising capital, which everyone is saying you need to raise capital right now. You don't have money. You're burning through it. So you're taking those risks off the table. Now, this segment isn't about Tesla. You could do what you want with the stock or whatever. That's just my advice. That's what I would do. But it's more about understanding that settling with the SEC or any regulatory authority usually leads to a much higher stock price. And you could see examples in the past. You could look at Herbalife, which settled with the FTC. And remember, Ackman launched a massive short campaign against the company, saying it was a Ponzi scheme. You know, it's worth zero. Our government officials to go after the company. All this crazy stuff that took 2-3 years, dragged out, right? His big fight with Icon on CNBC, Wapner and stuff like that, all crazy stuff. But what happened? July 2016, Herbalife settled with the FTC. The stock went up 21% on the same day. Now it's trading new all-time high. So you look at companies being investigated by the SEC. It creates a cloud. It creates uncertainty. Again, that's the worst thing to happen for your stock when you have uncertainty. That's what crushed GE. That's why I made the mistake. Yeah, I like GE looking at their assets and saying, okay, this stock is worth more than $20 based on their assets. But now when you tell me that you didn't throw in the kitchen sink, that your power business is a lot worse than expected, that the insurance behind, you're going to have to take write-downs on your insurance. So as Flannery was going through every one of those divisions, he found more and more and more stuff, and that uncertainty destroyed the stock because people thought, okay, you cut the dividend, that's it. You lowered your estimates from $2 to whatever, $1. That's perfectly fine. All right, we get it. Now we have the base. That wasn't the base case. And now, they fired Flannery, and now they have a new CEO coming in, and you're seeing why the stock went up higher because you have a guy that's not really so personal, right? It's when you bring on an outsider, he's going to fire anybody. He doesn't care who they are. Flannery's been at this company for a long time. He has a lot of great people that he knows. He probably went out with these families. Believe it or not, it's not that easy to fire these people. You're trying to find ways, even with my company, even with your company. When they grow, there's a personal attachment to it. There's a personal attachment to the employees that have been here the longest, and those who've been here the longest are making the most money. But when things go bad, it is a business. And sometimes it's difficult with Flannery, who was involved in Alstrom acquisition, and a lot of stuff that GE did. They were expecting changes to happen a lot quicker. So you bring in a guy from the outside. It's not going to be pretty for people who work at GE, but it's going to be really great for the stock because you're going to see them cut costs tremendously. They're going to sell divisions like crazy. And I do think that stock is pretty close to the bottom. You don't want to listen to me when it comes to GE, though, because I've been wrong on it. I'm just saying. Now, I'm bringing up GE because they're being investigated right now for past accounting measures and how they accounted for certain things, which, again, uncertainty around the stock. Riot Blockchain is another company. I recently talked to the new interim CEO since they got rid of the past management team, which was, part of that whole investigation. It was a great conversation with some of the things that they're doing. I said, look, I know you can't really talk too much about it, this and that, but, here's some of the things that you're doing, the different divisions, looking to they're invested in certain blockchain technologies and different companies and things like that and trying to create an exchange longer term, maybe an STO exchange or whatever, security token offering exchange. I was very impressed with everything he said, that if they settle with the SEC and get all this stuff behind them, that stock's probably going to go a lot higher, probably double from the current price. Again, you think of right blockchain, oh my God, this whole SEC investigation. But when you're looking at companies like this, and believe me, you'll find a lot of them, probably a few dozen if you do some searches on Google. A lot of these companies are probably trading at 52-week lows because of these investigations, among other things. So a lot of this risk is priced in. And once they settle, no matter what the amount is, since the SEC is not looking to put the company out of business, not going to have a $300 million market cap, they're going to say you owe $5 billion. If that was the case, they wouldn't settle and the company would go out of business. They shut them down. So if they're settling they're going to have to pay a fine. But once you remove that risk, and a lot of times these fines can be paid over 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. So it might be a lot on the surface, but once you remove that risk, now it's back to business. Now you could do lots of things. You remove the overhang. You take that monkey off your shoulder, and now, again, back to business. And you could see names easily saw 15, 20%, even more very quickly, and likely continue rising since, again, you're removing that major uncertainty, that biggest risk that everybody talked about from the stock is now gone. And now you can get a lot of more investors, a lot of more funds in it that don't have to worry about investigations like this. Just something interesting, things you can look at. GE is one stock like that. You're looking at Riot Blockchain. You're looking at Acacia Research, which is a patent company that loves to sue other companies that buys certain patents that are being infringed by Apple or Qualcomm and settles after years like that. There's a whole industry behind this, and forget about the ethics and say, wow, that's BS. You're purchasing these crazy patents and trying to file suits against, Apple and Qualcomm and Google and stuff like that. But a lot of these big companies did infringe on these patents. I mean, they did. And they won these settlements, and you see these companies go through the roof. So the timing is good because a lot of these companies are trading near 52-week lows, but try to read some research reports, see what's going on with the settlements. And a lot of times they'll say on a conference call, well, we're pretty close to settling with the SEC because you're going to have analysts talk about it on their conference calls. And they might mention something on it like, oh, things are going smooth. We're going to settle. Everything's okay. We're complying with them. They'll give you little hints and stuff like that. But a lot of times, if you're in these stocks, a lot of the risk is priced in. And then you could turn around and buy these things. And it can result in huge, huge gains once these cases get settled. Again, don't think like SEC is on you. If they sell, you're going to go to zero. A lot of times, they're going to talk about the company. They're going to talk about what the risk is. If it's certain management teams that needs to be replaced or it's against certain insider sells and everything. Again, you got to do a lot of due diligence. I'm not telling you just blindly, buy a stock that's being investigated and you're going to make money on it. There's a lot of research in it, but sometimes these things get hit more than they should. And once they settle with the SEC, which 95% of companies do, even every bank, everyone, once you settle, it removes that overhang and you get the chance to make huge short-term gains because those stocks usually take off after that. Okay, guys, still getting a ton of questions about tariffs, trade wars. Doing a lot of research on this, and I love the feedback I'm getting and just the recognition, too, where, a lot of these reports are being passed around different people and stuff like that, which I love because I put together a special report absolutely for free on why tariffs really don't matter. It's 20 pages long. Please read it before commenting and send me an email at frankcurzioresearch.com with all your stuff because I want you to look at the data, right? A ton of data, easy to read analysis explaining why most people have been dead wrong on tariffs, right? Saying it poses a risk to U.S. growth. They've been dead wrong since February. We're seeing growth go through the roof. We're seeing stocks do very, very well, new all-time highs. And you know what? They're going to continue to be wrong. So after you read this report, you'll find out why. You can find the report for free at CurzioResearch.com. There's a banner on the right-hand side, big box that says Trade War Event. You can click that. And I say event because you're also going to have access to my special interview with Jeff Phillips, which I just taped a couple days ago. It's going live. Who's a #1 analyst on rare earths. The one place I think China could really screw us, right? If they get serious about having an all-out trade war. So they control more than 85% of rare earths. These are metals that are in very crucially in all military applications, missiles, all kinds of technology devices that we use. It's a necessity for us. And if prices go up tremendously, it can really crush us, which is the reason why the last round of tariffs, if you noticed, what did the U.S. do? And Trump said, okay, we're raising tariffs on everything except for rare earths because that's going to crush us. So China really wants to get serious about this. That's where they could really crush us. And the fact that there's ways to play rare earths, a lot of people don't know. And there's certain companies out there and ways to play them. You're going to listen to this interview. Jeff's going to do an amazing job explaining how to invest in this industry. And he's a #1 analyst because he's made a ton of money the last time China went out, 2010, 2011, that they cut supplies of rare earths, raised prices on rare earths, mostly because of disputes with Japan and other countries. And these prices didn't go up 30, 40, 50%. Don't think like OPEC and oil. They went up thousands of percent. And these stocks saw gains of thousands to tens of thousands percent. So it's an interesting trend right now that I think could make you a lot of money in rare earths. And that's an exclusive interview with Jeff that you're only going to have access to by going to our website, CurzioResearch.com, and getting a free trade report. Again, all this absolutely for free, not selling you anything. Just my way of saying thanks for listening to the podcast and trying to help you guys become much, much better investors. Okay, guys, that's it for me. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you guys in 7 days. Take care.
The information presented on Wall Street Unplugged is the opinion of its hosts and guests. You should not base your investment decisions solely on this broadcast. Remember, it's your money and your responsibility. Wall Street Unplugged, produced by the Choose Yourself Podcast Network, the leader in podcasts produced to help you choose yourself.